Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is May 29th, 2017. I am Rollo McFlugel and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both at McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this week's episode is McFlugel.com/41, where you'll find some useful links for things like subscribing and following us on the various social media outlets. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our episode for this, or our topic for this episode.
Yeah, thank you, Rollo, and thanks again, everyone, for listening. We are recording this on Memorial Day, so let's always remember those who have died at the hands of the state, whether fighting for or against. Sad, and when you think about the total numbers, just if you look back to from World War I on, or even just the last couple of years, how many people have lost their lives fighting wars, it's very sad, and I think we should never forget those who have died. It's terrible losses, and what could this world look like if they did not die? But that's not what our episode is about today. Today we're going to talk about a story from Rollo's weekend. He was in a situation, and thankfully we have markets that helped him out big time. So, Rollo, why don't you explain the story, and maybe I'll throw in some questions as you're going to kind of play a devil's advocate role, if I can.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, it's one of my wild and exciting weekends that, as it was happening, I immediately thought, oh, this would be a great podcast episode topic. So it was Friday night. I was out with some friends. I don't know, about 10 miles or so from my house, at some bars. And the end of the night came, I was going to drive home. Everyone else was taking Ubers because they had a lot more to drink than I did, and that was okay to drive. And so I was walking to my car, was hitting my the lock button on my key fob to make sure I could see where my car was, and it wasn't going. But then I finally see my car, and I noticed the four-ways were flashing very dimly. I thought, that was weird. I don't remember putting them on. I walked up to the side of the car, and I saw the dash and the radio was flashing on and off. It looked like the car was haunted. It was pretty weird. And the fob didn't work. I couldn't unlock the car, so I'd use the key. So I put the key in the ignition, go to start it, nothing happens, except for the lights were continuing to flash and everything. And so I said, oh, great, something's the matter with my car. It's basically dead. So, normally in situations like that, your car is your kind of lifeline, and if it's not working, you're kind of stuck. And it was 1:30 in the morning, maybe. So not many people were around. Wasn't really going to call anyone. The people I went with were not around and weren't in a position to drive anyway. But the wonderful thing called Uber does exist. So I have the Uber app on my phone and called for a ride. An Uber driver came a few minutes later and drove me back home. It was a little bit of an expensive ride, but you know what? It really beat sleep in my car that night. So I was willing to pay the $30 to get back to my house. And the Uber driver was fantastic, by the way. A woman from Jamaica. We were talking about a lot of different stuff, including kind of things like farming. I even mentioned that I had a tractor, and then she asked me if I was going to farm anything, and I had some things to talk about.
20 more bucks.
Yeah, there we go. I didn't even plan that one. That one happened, and it did happen. I did talk about my tractor with her. So that night,
I do believe that.
Yeah. So that night before I went to bed, I went on my computer on my Wi-Fi. So I was actually in bed while I did this. So I had the battery in my laptop. I had my laptop, was using it on the battery, and when I was using the Wi-Fi internet, and did a bunch of searches for what could be the matter with my car. I had a good idea. I figured it had something to do with the battery. It was the original battery in the car, and I probably should have changed it sooner than I did. But I kind of I watched a lot of stuff, read some stuff on forums. There were some YouTube videos out there, kind of giving me an idea of what was wrong and what I should do, how to check it. So that was useful. And then the next day, one of my friends was out with last night, who lives close by to me, he said he would, drive me to my car, and we'd try to figure out what was the matter and do whatever we had to do. So I have this, it's kind of like a battery pack, emergency pack. It's got an air compressor on it. It's got a light. It jump starts your car, little electrical outlet, kind of the emergency thing. Good thing to have in your car. It was actually a gift for Christmas from my dad. Gave one to each of us in my family. And so we tried that. It kind of gave a charge to the car, so it could turn the electrical on, but it didn't turn the car on. It couldn't start. So we used Google Maps, found an AutoZone about a mile away, drove to it, went in. We kind of joked about it and said, "Hey, I bet the most expensive battery in the store is what I'm going to need for my car." And so we went, standing at the batteries. There's a shelf of them. Popped my phone out, Googled it. What kind of batteries my car need. Came up with the model number, and went and looked for it on the shelf. And sure enough, it was the most expensive battery in the store, $200. Which, so
the market screwed you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I'm glad that they had it at the correct price, even if it's a little bit. I'm sure if I shopped around, I could have gotten it for a lot cheaper. But you know what? Given the time,
it's nice they had it in stock for you.
Yes, and if they had it for a lot cheaper, then there's a good chance they would have sold out of it and wouldn't have had it available. So the fact that they had a couple of those batteries stocked in the shelves means that it was the right price, even if it was a little bit expensive, or at least it wasn't underpriced. I'll say that. So then we drove back to my car. My car is interesting, and another little thing that the internet helped me out with. I realized that the battery is not in the under the hood. It's actually buried under my trunk.
In the trunk?
Yep. So that was a little, because you just assume every other car I've ever seen has the battery under the hood. So if I went in the front of the car and was looking around for it, it would have made me waste time and get frustrated, where this helped me just be like, I know exactly where it is, because the internet helped me with that. Even though the manual would have told me that too, but who knows how long it would have taken me fishing around to be like, let me check the manual. So, put the battery, changed the battery, started the car up. It started like new. And then drove to the gas station because I was kind of bouncing on empty. And went about the rest of my day. And then I actually had to go to the liquor store, and I bought some beer and liquor because it's Delaware and you're allowed to do that on Sundays. No, that was Saturday. I'm sorry. But I could have done it on Sundays if I wanted to. So that's just kind of my story.
But you didn't.
I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Now you threw a lot of stuff out there, a lot of little things that the market helped you with. We would say the market helped you, but really it's just people interacting.
Right.
But if I am a statist, or I know everyone hates that term, but say I'm a statist, I say, you talked about going on the internet. Well, the government created the internet.
Well, not really, but
what would you respond?
Well, they didn't create the internet, but even if they did, I mean, even if I say that the government created the internet, that doesn't mean that they created all of the content on the internet. There had to be people that put the content there, and so there's.
In fact, yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
No, I don't have my research up. It's been a long time, but they had something called like ARPANET or something that they used. Does that sound right?
Yeah, something like that.
For military stuff, and it remained pretty much the same for a long time until they opened it up for people to develop. And everyone can see the power of the internet today. Like you were just mentioning wireless in your room. Even when I was in college, we all had Ethernet cords.
Yeah, even when I was in college,
get wireless internet, you usually. Yeah, and you're a couple years younger than me, but I remember my roommate brought in, I forget what it was called, AirMac or no, I can't, Air something. It was from Apple, and it was a wireless thing you plug in to your Ethernet, whatever. I don't know the right terminology. You plug it into the wall, and the signal was terrible. And we had a quad, which was three, one big room and then two small rooms on the side where we put our beds in. You couldn't get the wireless in the other room. It was only in the room that we were in. But now you look at it today. I mean, literally, you walk into someone's house and people say, "Do you mind if I get your password to use the wireless?" It's just kind of assumed that everyone has it pretty much everywhere. When you go into a coffee shop, you go check to see if they have wireless. It's pretty incredible in a relatively short time. I mean, that's like 10 years.
At my ISP, there's hotspots all over the place. I can just use my account login, my account credentials and log in and get Wi-Fi in a lot of places actually around. So it's very convenient. And even when I was in college, my college was, I think, ranked, if it not number one, top 5 most connected campuses in the country when I was going to school, and we carried around Ethernet cables because the Wi-Fi was, Yeah. Now it's like
it was spotty. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, now it's unbelievable.
Yeah. They don't even have when I bought my. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, my laptop doesn't have an Ethernet hookup into it.
Mine may. I don't know. I've never plugged anything into it, so I don't know. But another thing I wanted to bring up is you mentioned the price of the battery. I forget what the price was, $200 or something.
Yes.
And you said, thankfully, it was priced where it was. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? You're telling me you'd rather pay $200 than $150 or $100 or $50? And why?
Well, given the time, I mean, my car was not going to work unless I got a battery. And given that the store was a mile away, I was willing to, within reason. I mean, if it were $500, then maybe I would have been like, all right, let's ask my friend, like, hey, do you think I could? That
was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we could go to another store, maybe. But I also valued his time too. So, looking around at the prices on the other batteries, it wasn't like some batteries were $25, $30, $40, and this one was $200. It was, $150. I think $120 might have been the lowest price I saw. But just in general,
it's almost half. So it's 60%.
Yeah, but even in general, when you go to a store, you assume that the prices that you see there are going to be kind of the market rate, because when you have all the consumers, all the collection of them over time, if they're going to stores and they presumably go to different stores and there's advertisements that run, so you have a general idea of what costs are. That there'd be no way that store would be competing if they were really overcharging for it, because they would never sell them. And the only they have them on stocked in the shelves because they intend to sell them. So if the market price for that battery that I needed was $100, say, and they had it for $200, well, why would anyone in the world go shopping there, unless there was like a severe supply restriction on the batteries, which I really doubt there is.
Right, I was going to say, and I mean, a reason to be thankful is you had somewhat of an emergency. I mean, it's a weekend.
Right.
If you're going to order online, could you get it the next day? Probably. I don't know how much that would cost.
I don't know,
but
because,
you wanted the battery.
It's a 50 pound battery, so I don't know.
Yeah, you wanted the battery, exactly. Right, I don't
know how quick
shipping's going to be expensive.
Yeah,
but you want.
Yeah, I needed it right.
Yeah, you wanted the battery. It was an emergency. Right, exactly. And they have it in stock for $200. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was willing to pay a little bit more for it. The fact that it was a mile away, it was right there, boom, take care of it. And like I said, if it were like something absurd.
And if the price was lower and someone knew they could sell it for $200, why not just buy them all out and sell them for $200? And that way you don't have one.
Exactly. Yeah, but there was a battery stock there, and there was another battery right behind it. And I know that because it was kind of preventing me from pulling the battery out. So when I finally pulled it out, it dropped on my pelvis a little bit, so that felt great. But
Nice.
yeah. But let's say, for example, that the battery did cost like $500, which is an absurd number, but for the sake of argument, let's do it. And let's say my friend couldn't stay for much longer, and there was a place a half hour away or something that sold the battery for $200. It would have made sense for me. Well, one, if I wanted to pay a $300 convenience fee, I'd be free to do that. Or I could pay, go back to Uber and get an Uber ride for $40 or so. And then $40 back, and then, still not spend $500 for the battery
Still
altogether.
the same battery and still better off.
Right. So that's up to me. If I wanted to shop around, I was still free to do it. It wasn't a small city. I was, kind of a small city, but not really tiny. There was more than one, auto store in the area.
Right. Right. So what else did you mention in your story there? So you had Uber, which we've talked about several times, where Uber has totally changed the market for getting a ride somewhere, which they did not get their permission from government in order to operate.
Right.
Excuse me. They just went out and did it. And had they asked permission, I'm sure they would not have been allowed because there's a lot of money in those medallions for the cabs. But they went and did it, which is probably now we kind of talked about this before we went on, but I haven't been in a cab in a long time. I'm sure they're getting better. And if they're not, they're going to go away. So they better be improving their services because Uber's available pretty much everywhere. And that's not something that was not a government initiative. There wasn't there wasn't anyone out there saying we need to improve the cabs. Everyone knew cabs were bad. Everyone knew they were expensive, and but there was never any push from the government to say we need to improve this,
right?
Or no outcrying. Someone just came along and did it, and it took over. Now everybody has the Uber app, pretty much, or Lyft, or one of their competitors. The ride sharing is just huge. And there's no reason that we would have this if we just waited for government to do something. They have no incentive to do anything. They have an incentive to keep things the way they are. That was one thing. You talked about your internet.
Yeah, but also
about being able to get this battery on the spot. Yeah.
Oh, just real quick about Ubers, and I know people are going to say, well, you could have taken a taxi. And yeah, taxis were provided by the market, but due to over-regulation by the state, I mean, taxis, like we were saying, are pretty bad. And like Slappy was saying before we started recording, that a lot of taxi cabs, break their credit card machines, which they didn't have them for the longest time. But when they have them, they break them a lot of times. They'd rather deal with cash. And I don't carry a lot of cash with me. And I definitely did not have enough cash to have covered a taxi ride. So that would have been a fun situation to be in. Because I don't even know if I would have realized it, because you're so used to everyone taking credit cards nowadays. That if he, rolls up my house and says it's X amount of dollars, I'm like, here's my credit card. And he's going to say, no, cash. I'd have been, well.
And that's the only thing. And the only reason they're even able to do that is because the government would keep out competition. If anyone could compete, anyone with two brain cells would say, this is a stupid system. We need to have a cab company that has credit card machines. But you're not allowed to. So that's where Uber makes a huge difference. No cash at all.
You don't even have to carry a credit card when you're riding Uber. You don't even have to carry a credit card when you're riding Uber. Because,
as long as you have a phone.
Yeah, it's already there. It's already, within your app. You save your credit card to. So, yeah, you really only need your phone. So it makes life a lot. So especially if you're having a bad night. Now, if you lose your phone, I mean, you're kind of up a creek. But if you lose your wallet or something,
yeah, you're right.
But you still have your phone at least, then at least you can go home. Hopefully, they cancel your credit cards too if you lose your wallet. But and just to go a little further on that,
anything
that Uber and the credit cards, there's how do you set up a credit card to an Uber? Like there didn't have to be like some major coordination between Uber and credit card companies to do that. There's services that allow you to get paid via credit cards, and Uber or whichever company that's doing it doesn't have to, on an individual basis, do that coordination. There's services that are out there to make that easier. So it's all extremely smooth, and it just goes to show you that you don't need this, it doesn't all need to be planned out for you. That there's just people have incentives because they see a profit opportunity. And so they say, hey, there's all these people want to, expand their business, and a good way to make sure you're maximizing your revenue potential is to, be able to take as many forms of payment as you can, credit cards being one of them. So how about I create a service that makes integrating credit card purchases very easy with your business?
Right. You just talked about businesses spotting profit opportunities, which helps keep prices down. How about your battery being $200? If that's overpriced, someone could come in, anyone really who wants to sell that car battery could sell it for less and be profitable. But people aren't doing it. So either maybe that's just one item that they really overpriced, or it is a market price for that battery. Because no one else is coming in the area to sell it, or no one has spotted that potential to make money at a lesser price. Because given the opportunity, would you rather spend 190 or 200? Most people would say 190, all things equal. And if you're profitable at 190, you're going to win. So that hasn't happened in your area, so it's probably not profitable to make the price lower.
Right. And I don't even know. I'm actually curious. I forgot to do that today and yesterday, to actually look up the price of what, if I shopped around, what it would be. But I'm sure it's not going to be much different. On Amazon, maybe if I look at Pet Boys or, I don't know, the Sears, I guess would have it. Stores like that, or even Amazon. I'm sure it's really not going to be that much of a difference in price. Just like if I go to
right, so
any store looking for any product, it's generally going to be around the same price. But
yeah, it's in the same range.
Yep.
Some things higher than others, but no, I was going to say that's really, I don't have much more to add to your story unless there was something else you wanted to get out.
No, I mean, it's just one of those things where if I didn't have all those tools available to me, then it would have been awful. I mean,
certainly would have been a different weekend.
Yeah. And the other thing, I mean, I don't know if I really talked about it much, but I had my phone available that I was able to text my friend the next day. Actually, that night, too, because I kind of told him what happened a little bit that night, and he offered to help me out the next day. But let's say I was stranded. I mean, I could have called my, family member, but I would have had to woken him up at 1:30 in the morning and then have him drive, I don't know how long it would, a half hour, I guess, to come pick me up, and then another half hour to drive home. And, that's not fun for any of them. But, I had people, there's an Uber driver out there driving around wanting to make money, wanting for a situation, not wanting this situation to happen to me, but looking for situations where someone needed a ride. And it happened. So that's why they're out there, because they know that there's profit opportunities. So it's just, it's one of those things. We have the free market stories we do every week, and I think it's important. And I think it's important also to just tell a story like this, because and we didn't even, there's so many more things that we take for granted that the market does for us that we wouldn't even have thought to mention in this. I mean, there's so much stuff that happens
that we don't even realize are happening.
Right.
Right.
So it's just, take a step back every once in a while, especially when you have a problem. When you have a problem and, you can figure out a way to work it out. And yeah, it's frustrating. I didn't want to spend my Saturday afternoon and morning, leaning into the trunk of my car, replacing a battery. But, it worked out. And it worked out pretty well because it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, when we look at things that happen in government, try to replace your birth certificate.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Try to
it takes a
replace
long time.
Try to replace your driver's
I
license.
Yeah, that's always fun. Everyone loves going to the DMV and the service that they provide. But if there's competition out there, now you have an incentive to make your service better so people will use you. When you don't have that, it doesn't matter who you throw out there and what you do. People have to go to you. They have no options. So that's really the beauty of the market. And we benefit from it so much we don't even realize it on a daily basis.
It was funny because I was talking to someone at a barbecue I went to later that day, and they mentioned about how they used Uber to go to, like, there's a beef and beer or something, some benefit they went to. And they really weren't impressed by the driver. And so they said they downloaded the Lyft app and took Lyft home, and it was awesome. So right there, you can just, all it takes is a couple seconds to type in the App Store and get the app for free, and then try something else out. And they liked it. So
right, and if he really didn't like the driver, I don't know why, but he should have given him a low rating so that other people don't need to have a bad experience as well.
Right.
Because you can rate your drivers with Uber.
Yes.
Whereas a taxi cab, you're getting whoever they get, but when your ratings get low at Uber, they cut you off. So there's another incentive for the drivers to provide a good service.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's all I had for this week. We're not going to do our free market story because we just did a whole episode on one.
Yeah.
But anything to add before we go?
No, just show notes page is mcflugel.com/41 where you'll find links to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook, and also subscribe to our email list we have on the site. We do a kind of a weekly newsletter and probably sprinkle some emails in throughout the week otherwise too when stuff comes up. But we're doing some different things over at mcflugel.com. We'd love you to check it out and be a part of it, and share it, of course, with people who you think would get something out of it. Anything for you, Slappy?
Right. So with that, just enjoy your week and check us out again next week.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again.